All right, we're back. We are COMP1006. That's Intro to Web Programming in the winter 2017 semester. It's week 12, part 1 of our broadcast. We only have 2 weeks left before the exam. Part 1 is all around sending email with SendGrid. And if you don't know what SendGrid is, and by the way, I'm going to take up some questions about assignment number 2 in a second. What is SendGrid? What am I talking about? Remember, one of your requirements on your assignment. Let's take a look at the assignment details. If I go to COMP1006, all these ones here, and if I go to lessons, assignments, and I look at our simple CMS we're making, let's take a look. Wow, one day. Oh, here we are. Simple CMS, assignment 2. Notice that this week we're supposed to do site file and folder structure setup. Your static landing page means that it's just a landing page that's business related. Like, for example, maybe you're making it so that this is my grade page. That's what it should be, something saying. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be any. Maybe you're making a pizza site and you want to add different pages to your pizza, your theme, whatever you're making, right? Right now we have no theme. If it's okay if you just put a banner ad that says something like some kind of, landing page with something on it that says, welcome to my my beautiful business page or something like that. It's okay, right? Because right now it's just getting things going this week, right? Primary navigation and functionality using partial files. You should know how to do that, right? Functional site security, GitHub repo setup, and your host live on cloud service or some other host. That's all due last night. But the other part is we want to get this working email happening. And I haven't told you how to do it, but I'm going to use SendGrid. And the reason for this is you could use PHP Mail, but the problem with it is that Azure and Heroku will block you, right? If you had your own server, example, you had your own server inside of a virtual machine somewhere, yeah, it would probably work, right? You'd have to relay through port 25 and some email agent, but chances are your email will be blocked. And the reason for this is because your email, if you send it directly through PHP, is unsanitized. Like, it's dirty, it's stinky, it's smelly, right? And if it comes to my email box, it's going to go right to junk, because you know what? My little PHP server, it doesn't really exist in the real internet, right? And so because of that, intelligent spam filtering features that are included with Outlook and other places like that, or Gmail or whatever, will pick it up and say, I don't know what the origin of this file is. I don't know where you're getting this from. It'll just send it directly to junk mail, right? So it doesn't make any sense. And like I said, Azure and hosts like Heroku and others may block it completely. It won't even work. It won't even go out, right? Because it doesn't understand what you're trying to do. So to circumvent that, we need to use an email service most of the time. One of the most popular ones is called SendGrid, all right? And you can sign up for free as a student, all right? So how do you do that? Let's go to the site. I've talked about it before, but let's just go to SendGrid, right? Here's SendGrid. Now, you don't need to sign up through SendGrid itself, right? You can try it for free if you want, right? But where you want to sign up is through Heroku or through Azure. If you're using Azure or Heroku, you can add it as a service, right? That's what you can do. Well, okay. So that's how you do it, right? You get it as a service. Once you do, it'll give you API keys. SendGrid will sign up and give you API keys for you to generate. And then you can send an email. And I'll talk about how to set all this up. Okay, there's a bit of setup when it comes to this. We're going to be talking about a new tool today called Composer, right? And I got to talk about it because if you've never seen Composer before for PHP, I would be giving you or doing you a disservice not to show you it, right? Composer is like the NPM or Bower of PHP. It's a package manager. That's what it is, but specifically for PHP applications, right? So you need to know about Composer. So please, for now, what I'd like you to do in your Windows machine is go to Composer, right? If I put Composer PHP, I just put Composer PHP up here, right? It'll come up with composer.org, getcomposer.org. And this is where I want you to go. This is a requirement for today, Composer, right? I'm going to put this link on Slack. Let's go to Slack. And let's go to developer. And I'm going to put in Composer. All right. Again, it says dependency manager for PHP. But what you want to do is click on download for Composer, right? Download. Now, what you want to do is you want to download the Windows version, okay? You don't want to do this. You don't want to do like any of this kind of stuff. You want to download the Windows version, and that is, when it says manual download, 1.41 right here, okay? Now, mine will say something different, right, than yours. If I went to here and try to do the same thing on Windows, it might look something like, wow, it's really slow. Get composer.org. I've already done this, by the way, so you don't have, so I won't have to do it. But what you want to do is click download, and you might see Windows installer. Click this, and you're good to go, right? Please use this. Please don't use this stuff, right? You don't need to. Download and install Composer, right? When you do, you should be able to go into your file to check it. And if I type Composer, right, and I press enter, I should get this long stream of stuff. Yeah. This is Composer, right? And that's how you know everything has been added, right? Notice that there is -- version. You can also do that. So Composer -- version, right? And you can see that my version is 1.3.2. Yours might be something similar or later than mine. I got mine, again, like it says, January 27th of this year. Okay. That's the version I got anyway. So please download and install that. Cool. Composer, the dependency manager for PHP. Woo, we're cooking, right? We need this because when we download and install SendGrid stuff, if I go to SendGrid, right? If I go PHP, right? I need to download this thing called the helper library. So for PHP. So I'm going to download this one, and I'm going to use Composer to do this, right? So notice that installation package looks like this, right? I'm going to show you how to install it in a second. So in order for me to get this, and I'm going to give you this link for a second. This is the GitHub repo for it. I'm going to copy this and go over into Slack and put that in there too. This helper library, right, is the one we want to access so we can add SendGrid into our application, okay? We don't have an application yet. I just want you to know where it is, right? Cool? All right. So now that we have this and we have this, I'm assuming you've downloaded and installed Composer, right? What I want to do is kick off my application like normal. So I want to kind of go into COMP1006, right? And I've got my lesson 11. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to base it off lesson 11, make a duplicate, so copy paste. You don't have to follow me here. I'll put it up on GitHub in a second. It's quite large. It's 993 items, right? So I'll put it up on GitHub in a second. And once this is done, I'll go in here and I'll put lesson 12. I'm going to do the same kind of footwork that I did before. I'm going to go into there and get rid of .git and .idea and just delete those. So that way I can start with a fresh project for both those two things, for GitHub and so on. Go back out. And then I'm going to drag and drop it onto my terminal window, right? So I'm going to say, or my command prompt. So CD space, drag and drop this in there, right? And I'm going to clear the screen. And you can see if I do a dir that I have my assets, right? I'm going to do a git init. I'm going to do a git add dot this time. Ooh, all these extra files that I'm going to get. Git commit -m, initial commit. I'm not even going to change anything this time. Commit. And I'm going to go up into GitHub and create a new repository. So github.com. I'm going to / Georgian College. Again, Georgian College is my organization. I'm going to make a new repository here. So we're going to make COMP1006, W2017, and then it's lesson 12. Wow, I can't believe it. And then grab these last two lines here, Control C. I'm just doing it differently so you can see it different ways, and Control V. Right click paste, I mean. That'll be all right. And then, if everything goes well, I'm going to put everything up on GitHub. Don't grab it yet. I'm going to make some modifications. All right, so I've got this up on GitHub. And now that I've got it up on GitHub and it's got a GitHub repository, I want to add this in to my project structure. I'm just going to refresh this so I can see that it's up there. Here it is. There's lesson 12. I'm going to add this into my project structure by opening up PHPStorm, just like we've been doing all this time. And of course, I'm going to test it, right, the way we've been testing it so far. And I'm going to make a proper contact page with a mailer. That's what I want to do today, right? It's going to take a few steps to do, right? But I'm going to kind of drag it out with you guys. Platform and plugin updates. Yeah, okay. Not going to happen right now at all. Cool. I want to close this one. That's like lesson 11. I want lesson 12. So close my project. Lag. I love lag. That's great. And then I want to create a new project from existing files. And I got to do this whole trick again when I change my resolution because of the lovely projector we've got going on, right? So change my display settings and to something crazier. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to click, oh, it's just reverted. What the heck? Because I didn't accept. Playing with display settings in front of the class, lovely times, right? Apply. Yeah, keep changes. Sure. Next. I want to click this little one down here and click next. And now I want to choose, well, that's interesting. I want to choose C:users Tom desktop. And it's going to go into COMP1006 and lesson 12. Project group. Finish. And now while it's doing this little funky dance, I'm going to go out. Come back in. That's better. All right, so it's doing all its thing. It's calculating the files. It's doing all kinds of stuff with version control. And I've got my new project, except that there's a few changes I'm going to make. I have my index.php is good. My bower.rc is okay. Bower.json is incorrect. All right, so here's my bower.json. It's not lesson 8, that's for sure. It's lesson, I haven't changed this in a while. It's lesson 12, right? So I'll save that. And it's not PHP MySQL. This is, sure. This is not PHP MySQL now. This lesson is all around, come on, PHPStorm. This is all around a sending mail with SendGrid. And that's fine. My MySQL will also add a keyword, SendGrid, just to make it different. There we go. Save. I don't have a README file, and it might be a good idea when we put it up on GitHub to do that. So I'm going to kind of right-click, and I want to do New File. And I want to say it's a README.md. Do you want to add the following to Git? Yes. And notice I have two sides of this file. I have my MD. MD stands for, what does it stand for? Anybody know? .md. .html is hypertext markup language, right? .css is cascading style sheets. .js is JavaScript. .md is not doctor. It's Markdown, okay? Markdown. And the way Markdown works is when you use one hashtag like this, that signifies an H1 tag. If I press space and say something like COMP1006, right? And then say winter 2017 lesson 12, right? We can see that it becomes bold, right? PHPStorm has a Markdown, interpreter built in. Double hashtag means H2 tag, right? So I can say sending email with SendGrid, right? So plus. And that's what's going to go up on GitHub now. When I put this up, when GitHub powers up, it's going to put this as the README file that's inside of my project. All right, cool. Let's add this to GitHub, and we're going to do this through terminal. I'm just going to go in git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added README file, and then git push origin master, and then bam, it's going to go to master. What does it look like when I do this? I can go up here and I can refresh, and now you can see that down in the bottom we have this little README file right here that pops up. So the readme.md file, the Markdown, actually pops up by default here in GitHub, and you can put whatever details you want in here. Any documentation, how to use your file, your project, and everything can go in here. If you want to read more about Markdown, right? So if I talk about Markdown, right? Syntax, you can always read up about it. Sure. I'm just clicking one. Here it is. The Daring Fireball Markdown syntax. All right. Overview, inline HTML, right? And does this give you what you need? Wikipedia is better. All right. Wikipedia Markdown. Quick reference. No, that's a WordPress site. I want to see if there's a better one than Wikipedia. Sometimes you can find some really good cheat sheet. Here we go. It's on GitHub too. Ooh. All right. Yeah, so this is it. This is actually a really good one. So this is a H1 tags to H6. So you can almost write like little HTML here. Why would we want to do this? Because we can actually, when we pull up on GitHub, we can make it nicely styled, that page, instead of ugly, right? Remember, it's not a web page. We can make it look like a web page. All right, emphasis. We can do that as well. Different kinds of lists. And this is a little great link. I'm going to take this link here. I think whoever did this is pretty cool. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go across into our developer and paste it in. Right? So that's kind of a cheat sheet for Markdown. Okay, if you're interested. And you know what? It's great. It's a great way of doing this kind of stuff. Right? Cool. Other little tools to show you today. One of the things we do a lot when it comes to doing code, especially with PHP, is something called code reviews. Anyone hear about code reviews before? Yes, I see one nodding head. Okay, yay! Code reviews. You're hired by somebody. You got hired by the bank, or you got hired by some government agency, and they're like, hey, Tom, we're going to do a code review, and you don't want to do this on your face. Code review? What's that? Right? I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, code review, right? But what they do is they actually look at your code, and there's a way of, and I like to call it linting. I don't know if you ever hear about a linter. You know what a lint brush is? Here's a lint brush, right? Lint brush looks like this, right? Lint brush takes lint off your clothes, right? Lint is like these little, things that build up because of the dryer, right? Sometimes, right? And you got these little lint all over the place. And then what happens is you take a lint brush and you brush it off, right? This is good. This is nice. This is beautiful. This is wonderful, right? But what ends up happening is we have lint on our code too, right? Think about our lint as bad code or code that's not formatted properly, right? And we want to be able to capture it somehow. Well, there's a really cool integration with GitHub that you can use to help us out to do code reviews automatically, right? Now, there's something we can use called a PHP linter. So if I go PHP linter, right? If I want to make it for PHPStorm, right? You can actually download and install, you know, kind of a PHP code tool to help you with any kind of problems, right? Now, I'm not going to do this. I'll tell you, PHP linters, any kind of linter in general, all right, is a pain in the you know what. Why? Because it's going to pop up with errors. Whoa, something's not right here. Something's not right here. Something's not right here. I'm okay with that, but I like tools that are kind of online that'll analyze my code when I put them up on GitHub. And there is one tool like this, right? And to show you this, if I look at integrations, so if I go to settings, and if I go to integrations and services, and if I go to browse directory of installed integrations, you can see that there is a code review integration that you can download and install download and install on your GitHub account called Code Factor, right? So if I look at Code Factor, I'm just going to introduce this to you so you can see it. If I go to Code Factor, I've already signed up for it, right? So if I log in, and I'm going to log in with GitHub, there it is. You can see that I've already analyzed a couple of my repositories. Let's add this one we just made, right? So I'm going to kind of click plus. One day when my computer responds because I'm running a VM. And you can see this is the one we just added, right? I can add this repository in here as something that I want to review. And I click on import from GitHub. And when I do that, if I scroll down, I can see that I'm analyzing my code and I'm getting a B+, right? I'm getting a B+ because I have some problems in my code. Oh man, this is no good. I'm getting problems because of jQuery. What does jQuery have to do with me? In fact, if you think about my code for a second, so if I go back to my my code on GitHub, so if I go to GitHub and I go to Georgian College and I look at my code here, right? Remember, I have this folder that's scripts. Inside my scripts folder, I have lib. Inside my lib folder, I have Bootstrap, Fontosum, and jQuery. Do I want to get any kind of review for them? That's not my code. That's their code, right? So the answer is no. And I can exclude this from my review, right? So I can click on this one as an example. And as you can see, I have the option of, I'm just clicking one random file, scripts, lib, jQuery, blah, 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 and I'm just ignoring the file. When I do that, I can go into settings from my repository, right? Just showing you this. You don't have to do this, guys. I'm just showing you this so you see how I can go to ignore files, and I can choose under my library, right, to ignore all files in my scripts lib by putting the double asterisks and click Save Changes. Cool. And now when I go back here, I get an A, right? Because it doesn't care about those things. That's pretty good, actually. Okay, so there's some pretty good stuff here that's happened. My code is okay. And this is a great way of checking your code, right? If I want to fix any issues, they would come up here. All right. Next, I want to put this up on Heroku, right? So I'm going to go to Heroku.com. I'm going to sign in. There we go. And in Heroku.com, I want to add in a new app. I got lots of apps, but I'm going to add in a new one. My new one is going to be COMP, actually we'll make it all lowercase, COMP1006, W2017, lesson 12. Okay, definitely in the United States, not in Europe. And click Create. I'm also going to attach it to GitHub, just like we normally do. So here's GitHub. One day. And I'm going to search for my app, my GitHub on, notice this, me, or I can also search on Georgian College, which is where I want, just to specify, and I want to say COMP W2017, right, as an example. So I want to see them. I want to see lesson 12. There it is. I want to connect it. Okay, good. And I want to enable automatic deploys like we've done before. And I want to test it by deploying my branch. Okay, so it's going to do its thing, deploy its branch, blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. Let's view it up on Heroku. If we did everything correctly and it didn't mess up, then dashboard, right? And notice if I want to go into my login, can I log in from here? I'm using my online service, so I should be able to. So my username, right? Now, we did this before last time. Remember this? What's the username that I used? Did I register anybody? Let's register a new one because this is, yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I did. Maybe I did. Peter Parker, sure. Peter Parker. And let's, you know, put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just to make sure and log in. An error occurred. Error. What's going on here? How come it's giving me this weird error? Why did it work locally and not remote? Because remember what we did. We modified our database to accommodate a much larger password, right? My password has to be at least minimum 60 characters. And that's why it's giving me this error right now, right? I don't even know what it did. Did it actually put Peter Parker in there? You know, did I actually register anything? I mean, it's definitely giving me an error. I don't know what's going on. Let's check and see if this is correct. Like, this is definitely not working, right? So I'm going to go back to, you know, to use MySQL. If I type in MySQL Workbench, remember how we connected to this last time, right? I have my ClearDB that I'm using on Azure. That's how I'm connecting to all this, right? So I'm using ClearDB. And what I want to do is I want to look at my video games DB, right? And under tables, I have my users table, right? So here's my users table. Notice that I have my columns and I have my password column and my password column, oops, my password column. I can actually look at my structure for my, my table. So if I go onto users table and I want to do a new, I want to create, change my, my table. I want to alter my table somehow, right? How do I do that? What do I do? How do I fix this? You know, I mean, I got all these queries, but this isn't going to help me. This isn't going to save me at all, right? I want to change my table, my structure. So how do I do it from here? Does anyone remember? You're gonna have to do this, guys. If you have the new version of security. If you haven't done this already, then something went wrong, right? Because you need to hash your password. We talked about last week using password hash and password verify, right? But in order for you to do that, you need your password area to be much larger, right? So how do I alter one object in the table? Well, I can, if I click alter table, notice that in my username, I'm okay with username, it's 50. My password is 50, and that's not correct anymore. So password cannot be 50. Password has to be much larger than that, right? I want to change this to something much larger, like 256 or 255, just to give myself some room, some breathing room, all right? And click apply. It's going to create the table for you, the information, and click apply, and everything goes fine. We'll be good to go. There's 255. All right, now my table is able to hold much larger objects, right? Objects up to 255 characters, which is good for passwords only. Usernames, I don't really care so much, but passwords, oh yeah, I really do care about that. All right, we also want to make a new query. I want to look at the top 1,000 rows, right, of my table. And you notice that I have this, just me, right, happening right now. This isn't going to work. That's not going to work at all. This Thomas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Thompsoniopoulos, right? Because my password is not hashed, right? So I need to delete this somehow, right? Can I delete it right here? So if I kind of select the row, can I just go like delete and apply? Is that possible? And yeah, it is, right? Cool. So I got no username now, no user at all, right? Let's add me back in. And let's see if it works through Heroku, because if it doesn't work through Heroku, I got a problem. Hey, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Hold your horses, you're going to say, Tom. Did you point your database to Heroku or to ClearDB on Azure? Or am I pointing my database to my local host? Oh, man, that's a big issue, right? Let's fix that problem. How do I fix it? I'm going to go back over here and not this part. Jesus. I'm going to go back, and I say Jesus for a reason. I'm going to get in trouble for that. I'm going to go back into my config, my database. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. I want to know. And then underneath this, you notice that I've got my ClearDB access is here, right? Here it is. And I've got this stuff down here. Well, I want to put this up here. I'm going to cut it out, right? I'm going to put it in here. And by the way, I'm going to show you another way, another day of how to do this automatically, maybe next week, with environment variables. All right, so here's my local host, and I want to take this and uncomment this part. Right, here's my uncommenting. And I want to do this, I want to comment these parts out. Right? Sorry, Dasha, I got to uncomment you again, or comment you out again, just because. Right, we've used your name all semester, right? That's it. Save, and now I'm going to go here and I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say I changed db config, and I'll say git push origin master push up, and do a push up. There we go. So I'll do a push up to GitHub, and then from here I can check to see what's going with my activity. Here's my activity. You can see if it's done or not. Build in progress. It's happening, right? And when my build is complete, it's going to show me that we're done. Yay. Deployed. No issues. If it was a deployment issue, I would have a problem. I would see it there as a deployment problem. I can go back here and refresh. Actually, cancel. I'll go back here and click login. And now I'm going to register a new user with email and stuff. I'm going to register myself. So username is Thomas. Password is 123456. And display name is me. Right? And then click submit. And then we're good, right? Okay, to check this, to see if it's working, we're going to go back over here and we're going to rerun this query, right? So I want to see the this thing again. Now, if you notice, if I click execute, I see now that Thomas with an ID of 11, username is Thomas, my password is massive, right? And my display name is whatever. See that? Massive. Okay, so that worked. So now I know I'm getting a hash password up on Heroku. Everything's working. Guys, you had to have done this part. Or if you didn't do it, then if I go up and try and access your stuff on Heroku or someplace else, it's going to fail, right? So if you didn't have that done, and if you try it out on Heroku and it fails, this is one of the reasons, right? You need to point it to Heroku or ClearDB or JawsDB or someplace out there to make it work. Okay, number one. All right, that's pretty good. I like that. That was good. I got that going. Let's see if I can get the games list. Do I got a games list happening? Yeah, I got a games list. Oh, I got some other games here. Different set of games than I got last week because it's pointing to a different database, right? This is not my database. This is or not the local database online, right? And really, in most cases, you want to do this kind of stuff more often because it's more accurate, right? We're working with a database that's online. It's much easier than working with something local. Okay, cool. Now, I want to add SendGrid, right? We've done some of the work, but we need to do the other part of the work. I need to use Composer to do a couple things. One, I need to initialize a composer.json object. That's what I want to do, right? So let's do that together. So I want to come down here, and I want to launch my terminal window. Now here I've got my terminal window inside, integrated in terminal window inside of my my application. I've just brought this way up here so you can see only terminal window inside my PHPStorm, right? Again, I'm going to press CLS for clear, and now I'm going to do composer init and press enter. And if I've done everything correctly, it's going to ask me to kind of step me through the initialization process. It's a little batch file, if you will, or a wizard, right? A little wizard. Where is he? Where's the wand? Who said that last time? Someone told me that. Anyways, so if I sit there and I look at my vendor name, I can accept my package as what it is. Enter. My description. If I want to enter a description, I can put that in here. For example, I could say something like sending mail with SendGrid. Here's my author, that's me, enter, right? Minimum stability, I'm going to put enter. Package type, library, project, meta package, composer plugin, obviously it's a project. Right? License, MIT, right? Define your dependencies. If I know what my dependencies are, I can define them here, right? Are you guys with me? There's just another way of adding another dependency manager, just like we did with Bower, right? Press yes. And now we want a package that we want to search for, okay? And I could search for a package, but unfortunately for us, when it comes to SendGrid, there is a bit of a, let me search for it. See if I search for SendGrid. SendGrid, press enter. If I don't, enter it properly, you can see that these are all the ones that they have. SendGrid, SMTP, a bunch of different packages, PHP, HTTP client. We don't know which one this is, right? And this is where I go back to, when I use SendGrid, I want to go back to the SendGrid documentation. I'm going to go back over here for a second. So here's my SendGrid stuff, right? And I want to add it in as a dependency. So I'm going to talk to SendGrid email PHP, right? And if I click on this, it's going to give me this little stuff, this little thing here. It's going to tell me some code to put in to make SendGrid work, right? And this is fine, right? But it really doesn't allow me to add in all my dependencies with Composer. It doesn't tell me anything about Composer dependencies or anything like that. Okay. All right, I like this. This is the code I need to use. It says, we recommend using SendGrid PHP, our client library, available on GitHub. If you want GitHub. Cool. I'm going to take this thing, copy it, and I'm going to go back to our Slack, and I'm going to put in my stuff on GitHub right here, and that'll be the information you need for SendGrid for PHP. All right, what does this mean? This is markup, man, or Markdown, this whole file here. When I go to this, right, down in here, this README file, right, this is Markdown. And if I scroll down, look what I need to do. I need to do this inside my composer.json file. It's asking me to put this in, okay, SendGrid. At 5.4. Well, this is a pattern. SendGrid. Didn't I see that over here? SendGrid. I'm going to choose 0. See what happens. We can always modify this later, right? Because SendGrid is the first option. Press enter. Enter the version constraint to require, or leave blank to use the latest version. Sure. And it's going to go out, grab stuff from SendGrid, if I'm right, and install the package that I want inside my PHP project, right? I need to use this little helper so that I can do email properly, because I'm actually going to leverage on a different library that I currently don't have in my PHP application, right? So that's what I need to do. That's why I'm doing this, right? I want to grab that library if I'm successful one day when this thing updates. Huh? I know, eh? There it is. I can add another package, search for package, but I'm good with version 5.4. Look, 5.4, right? And if I look over here, 5.4, we're golden, right? We're good to go, right? Press enter. We don't want another package. Would you like to define dev dependencies? Right? This is where it's for development only. You don't need it for the project. I don't have any dev dependencies right now, so I'm going to put in no. Press enter. Now it's going to show you what it's going to look like, right? Notice it says email and this. It also gives you this part, SendGrid, SendGrid 5.4. And notice that that is exactly what I would have had to type in by myself, right? Okay, we're good to go now. I think I'm good. Yes. It says, would you like the vendor directly added to your git ignore file? Absolutely, right? Cool. What did this do? Did it do anything? I'm just going to drag this thing down. Well, if it did something, it would be in here as a vendor, right? Do you see a vendor folder, right? Because if it wasn't in here, if it's not here, and if you don't see it, it's not part of my folder structure, right? And in other words, am I done? Have I done everything I need to do for SendGrid? That's the question. And I don't think I have it. Let me just check to see by listing it. I need to have a vendor folder now. Okay, so I'm going to kind of do a CLS. I'm going to do a dir, and if I have a vendor folder, I'm golden. But I don't. Right? I have a composer.json file. That's what it generated, this thing, right? Here's my composer.json file, right? This is it. And I also have a new git ignore file that it added in, /vendor. Well, I don't have vendor in here, right? Hey, what this means is if I add this into my git ignore file, that means my new vendor will not be up on Git, right? It won't go to Git. If it doesn't go to Git, I don't know if it's going to work on Heroku, but let's take a chance. Worst case scenario, if something doesn't work, we can always fix it, right? For now, I'm going to assume that Heroku knows about Composer because it's it's the most popular package manager out there, and it'll know what to do. How about us? Do we know what to do? Absolutely. We're going to clear the screen, and we're going to go Composer install. And if we did everything correctly, it's going to go out, grab only the dependencies, and install the vendor folder for us. The vendor folder is going to include our new helper package from SendGrid to help us do our sending mail. By the way, this is all set up right now, right? Look what it does here. Yay! Fantastic. Generating all load files. Now, let's check to see if we've got everything, right? So it did all that. If I go over on the left, we should see a new folder pop up eventually. There it is. Yeah, there's vendor, right? And you can see that under vendor, I have Composer, and there's a bunch of files in here that we're going to grab, and we're going to use all of these libraries automagically together. Notice it says, hey, move file to I definitely don't want that. I don't know what happened there. No, definitely not, I said. Cool. Let's update GitHub. And now we've updated GitHub. Let's see if it actually runs this file properly. So I'm going to say something like git add dot git commit -m. We'll say added SendGrid as dependency via Composer. Git push origin master. Now this is going to push this up to GitHub. It's not going to stop my project. I just don't know if it's going to work. And the way to test this is if you go up on Heroku, right? Heroku, if I look at activity for a second, right? So let's take a look at activity. There it is. It's doing its thing. It's build in progress, right? And if I want to view the build in progress, I can do that. Here's the build, right? Hey, look what it's doing. Installing SendGrid, right? So it did it all for me. So you know what? Heroku is smart enough to understand that what these packages do. I need to do this stuff. And it's downloading and installing it for me. So even though I don't install it physically, I don't put it up to GitHub, right? Because I have my composer.json file, Heroku and other modern PHP service providers will know about Composer because Composer is being used to create or download other kinds of packages, like, for example, a whole framework like Laravel. I would love to show you guys Laravel, but you know what? We just don't have the time, and it's completely out of scope for us for this class. But if you are interested in learning more about PHP in an object-oriented environment, please take a look at Laravel. Laravel, there it is, and it's spelled right. Which is love, beautiful code. We do too. Take a look at Laravel, where we extend and we make PHP beautiful, right? Just like TypeScript, right? It's a framework for PHP. And the great thing about Laravel is if you love to code properly, Laravel is one of the best ways to do it. It structures your code. It is opinionated, which means you have to follow best practices with Laravel. You cannot just choose to do, it's not a glue framework where we kind of take what you want and leave the rest like a Chinese buffet. It's not like that, right? You need to actually use the whole framework properly. And in order for you to do that, you have to download and install and use Laravel. There's a bit of training involved, how to do that. There are ways of installing and scaffolding Laravel very quickly, and it's quite a neat little framework. Laracast is really cool. They have their built-in training. If you want to understand, you can actually watch and get kind of Laravel training right through Laracasts, which is kind of cool. I think it's pretty awesome. These folks are professional, and this is one of the most popular PHP frameworks on the net today. Right, so we don't have time for it, unfortunately, because it requires at least 3 or 4 weeks, right, of training to get it done. And it's better for us to know the basics of PHP first. But Composer is used all over the place with that kind of stuff and other frameworks. I should mention a couple other frameworks before we take a break. One of them, of course, is the Zen framework. It's an older framework, Zen framework. Right, that's a glue framework. Okay, Zen framework. It actually does add functionality to PHP to make PHP nicer, better, right? It's an older framework, and it's something that has been adopted by Adobe and other vendors like that. So lots of support for Zen, right? There's also, I have to also mention CodeIgniter. Igniter, there it is. Again, an older framework that's been recently updated to make PHP easier and better, adds additional functionality to PHP, right? Very, very cool framework. Not as much of a glue framework as Zend, right? It's still a framework you have to kind of buy into, right? But a little bit lighter in weight than Cake PHP, which is the last one I want to share with you. Right? Here's Cake PHP. Right? All of these frameworks have one thing in common, and which I love: scaffolding. Right? You can create a PHP application in minutes with one of these frameworks, any one of these frameworks. Right? It'll scaffold it out, just like it'll blow up or expand, just like we did with WordPress. Right? It'll create a whole framework for us where we can build on to make professional PHP applications. Right? Sorry? If you're going to do anything nowadays, Laravel is the best one to learn, right? But any one of these frameworks are fantastic. They all have positives and negatives, pros and cons. Some of them are older, some of them are newer, but they've all been updated lately, and there's nothing wrong with using any of them to expand and make your code better. I just got to mention them in terms of, hey, look, they exist. Don't think that you're making PHP sites in a vacuum, right? Remember, 80% of our back end still is PHP, and that's why these frameworks exist, to make developers happy, right? Because we're not happy with unstructured code, right? Remember I told you the first day? I told you I don't like PHP by itself. I like PHP with the framework, because then I have structure. When I have structure, I have control. And when I have control, I can rule the world, right? At least on the web, okay? So that's where I want you to go with that thought. All right, so, Cake PHP, I like this one a lot. Actually, it's an older one, and it's very straightforward, and it's all command line. It's really, really cool. By the way, don't ever think that any one of these frameworks has got a UI. No UI, right? Everything but everything. If you haven't learned anything from this semester, it's you need to learn command line. You need to learn it. You need to be comfortable with it. You need to be happy with it. You need to love command line. If you don't, and you want to be a developer of any kind of strength whatsoever, I don't know. You're more of a designer, not a developer, right? Command line gives us control, right? We are addicted to UI, all of us, to Windows, to Mac, to everything else. It's easier for us to see things in a user interface than it is in a command line, and that's the problem, right? Whenever we add something, we're actually subtracting in some ways, right? The more we add, make it easier, the more we subtract. And like I said in other classes, just because it tastes good doesn't mean it's good for you, right? All right, let's move on from this little rant. So what I'm talking about here is adding SendGrid, and I think it's a great place to take a break. We've set up Composer. We've set up our dependencies inside the vendor folder, and the next step is getting SendGrid to play nice with Heroku. And we need to get an API key from SendGrid, connect it to Heroku, and again, the only way you can do that is if you enter a credit card, right? Remember, I told you this before. This is nothing to be afraid of. I've been using Heroku for years. Never paid them anything because I'm using a free services, you know, as a professor. It's the same thing for you. If you're not doing anything professionally, if you're not, you know, going outside of your sandbox rules for using their databases, and if you're learning, they're okay with it, and they're not going to charge you anything. Once you start getting up into professional levels, when you start using, you know, a more robust virtual machine or something like that, then they'll start charging you. But unless you have a call for that, your credit card will not be charged. If you don't have a credit card, you don't have access to one, then you're gonna have to go to SendGrid direct, all right? And then they will give you API keys, and you're gonna have to incorporate them on your own. Okay, let's take a short break and we come back. SendGrid part 2.